Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's town hall. I'm Alan Valentine, the president and CEO of the Nashville Symphony, and you just heard Jim and Lynn and Jonna Bradley performing the Allegro from Jean-Marie Leclerc's Sonata for Two Violins in A Major, Opus 3, number 2. I want to extend a really heartfelt thank you to all of you for being here tonight. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce our board chair. I have over the years worked with lots and lots of terrific board chairs, and I can tell you that we are truly blessed to have Pamela Carter chairing the board of directors of the Nashville Symphony this year. She's a great leader and just really been one of the highlights of my career to work with Pam and get to know Pam. And with that, I would turn it over to Pamela Carter. Please.
Oh, what a thoughtful way to start the evening. Thank you so much. I'm humbled and delighted, and I want to welcome every one of you to this event. This virtual gathering represents one step closer to that time when we can welcome you back to our concert hall so that we together can experience the shared joy of live music. Now, over the next hour, you're going to hear several more performances from our musicians. And it's wonderful to be able to hear them again because we've missed them so much. They are the point of why we all come and enjoy our music. Many of these performances that you'll be hearing have been recorded especially for this event this evening. And you'll also get a chance to hear from the musicians themselves, their experiences and their perspectives. Ever since the pandemic hit last March, our board and our staff have been relentlessly focused on how to ensure that the Nashville Symphony survives the pandemic and then thrives thereafter. And as you know, we have to make some very difficult decisions early on. But the generosity of our community, many of you who are in the audience today, have helped us to make it possible for our musicians to come back already on a part-time basis until we're able to take that next important step toward full operations. You'll get a chance to hear not only from the musicians, but you'll also hear from our members of our board, our leadership team. And I have to tell you, we've been working with the leadership team that literally, I don't know if they get any sleep at all. We've worked with them round the clock. And with the Restart Advisory Committee of the board, we have been doing financial modeling together. We've been looking at issues like the safety and security of our patrons, the community engagement, customer experience, education, facilities, and programming. And we are making a lot of progress, and we're so excited about giving you transparent steps all along the way so you can see what we've been doing. And we want to make sure that we emerge from this pandemic stronger, that we're helping our community to heal, and that we're here for the long term so that we, this time, and our generation will have set the stepping stones and the cornerstones for the generations to come. So thank you again for attending, and I hope you enjoy this hour. Alan?
Sorry. Thank you, Pam. And at this point, I want to mention that Blakeford has been one of our longtime sponsors. They have stuck with us through the pandemic, like so many of you all and so many of our donors in the community. And it gives me great pleasure to tell you that Blakeford helped make tonight possible. They're the sponsor of this evening's town hall. And I'd like to welcome Brian Barnes, CEO of Blakeford, to make a few comments. Brian? There he is, Brian.
There we go.
There
Hello.
we go. Okay.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, I think Blakeford, I think we're in our 7th year, I believe, of sponsoring the symphony. It's an honor, and we certainly believe in the mission of the symphony. And we, like everyone else, are looking forward to things, to live performances again, and we're excited about helping you reach that goal, certainly. Just quickly, if you're not familiar with Blakeford, we're a premier provider of housing and healthcare services for senior adults. This includes our campus we have in Green Hills, Blakeford at Green Hills. We're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary in 2021 of our campus. And on our campus there, we have independent living, assisted living, short-term rehabilitation, and long-term nursing care. So, and we're excited to announce that we just broke ground on a $100 million expansion project on that campus, which will include additional independent living, as well as a new health and wellness center, and lots of other enhancements on the campus. So we got a lot of things going on, and 2021 is an exciting year for us. Also want to say that in addition to our campus that we have in Green Hills, for seniors who perhaps don't want to live into a community setting, they want to stay at home and age in place, our Live Well by Blakeford program provides services and support and healthcare benefits to allow folks to do that. So we kind of have regardless of your desire and your need, we have something that we can meet you at your place of need, I guess. So to find out more about Blakeford, just invite you to go to our website, and we'd love to hear from you if we can ever help you in any way navigate a very complicated healthcare system, which we help a lot of people do. Whether they come to Blakeford or anywhere else, we'd like to help in any way we can. So with that, thanks again, Alan. I really appreciate the opportunity to host this tonight, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks so much, Brian. Again, we're deeply grateful for your support and for sticking with us through this very challenging time. And I will say that, you know, like so many of our generous donors, we're just, we wouldn't be where we are today and to where we are in our journey through this without the help, support of the community. And we're certainly grateful to Blakeford. Next, I would like to introduce another performance. This performance features Kevin Bate, Shel Fan Zhang, and Anthony Lamarquina, three of our cellists, performing the Largo from Julius Klengel's Little Suite for Three Cellos. Well, that was certainly beautiful. They did a gorgeous job, and I know it only serves really to underscore how much we all miss the music. And with that, we're really thrilled to welcome our musicians back on a part-time basis under a stipend agreement. They began under that agreement in January, and I can assure you all that we're all working tirelessly toward our goal of bringing them back to the stage when conditions then permit. And while we're unable to gather in person, we're collaborating with the musicians on ways they can continue performing, staying connected with our patrons and all of you, and being partners in our reemergence planning. We're thrilled, of course, to have them participating this evening, and you can look forward to hearing more from them in the weeks and months ahead. The big question, of course, is when we are able to gather in person again, and when the orchestra is able to start playing concerts again before a live audience, the first order of business we have in that effort, of course, is safety planning to ensure the well-being not only of our employees, but also of all of you and our audiences. So we're thrilled to announce that we've worked out an agreement with HCA that will HCA will serve as our health and safety partner as we move into our reemergence, and they'll be integral to that planning process, and we're profoundly grateful for their generosity and support. They've been longtime sponsors of the symphony, and they're going, even the extra mile in this particular collaboration as our health and safety partner. And as we develop our health and safety plans, and as conditions allow, we'll be able to phase in our performance plan. And we'll start with smaller ensembles, of course, with social distancing as required, as conditions require, and scale up, of course, as we go forward to larger and larger orchestras as the conditions, of course, allow that. As soon as it is safe to welcome audiences back into the hall, I can assure you that we'll be ready to do so. And that's really going to be thanks largely to the partnership with HCA and our musicians. Our goal every step of the way is to help the community heal through music. And that's especially true in this near term. While the orchestra, is back on this part-time basis, we really want to focus on the community with the various things that we'll be able to do. At the same time, I did want to give you a couple of operational updates relative to the business of the symphony. First of all, I wanted to let you know that we are in the process right now of trying to get a better understanding of a couple of items that were in the most recent COVID relief package that was signed into law a couple of weeks ago. And we know that there's a second round of PPP that is available to the symphony, as well as a portion of that relief bill. There were $15 billion dedicated to what are called shuttered venue operators grants, and those are grants through the SBA. And at this point, this federal relief is a top priority because we think it'll play a critical role in our ability to have the cash flow necessary when the time comes for our restart. And in the meantime, we're focused on keeping the building in good shape. That's been a bit challenging over the last few weeks and months. Some of you remember back last summer, we had a big infestation of birds, martins, and we got through that. We've had challenges with a number of things, though, in the last few months relative to the building, ranging from maintenance issues inside the building to maintenance issues outside. And fortunately, and thanks to the generosity of the Turner family, we've been able to bring back just a week ago, actually, two key members of our maintenance team to go to work on making sure that when we do reopen, the building is in tip-top shape for you. We're also phasing in a few key employees that will help ensure that we can execute programming over the next several weeks as we scale up activities with the orchestra. Do want to express again our deep appreciation to all of you and to the community for helping us get to this point in our reemergence. We really were fortunate that and by the way, we set a record in terms of annual fundraising through December 31st. And that really helped enable us to do to create the agreement with the orchestra that would bring everybody back on a stipend in January. And I can tell you that beyond just the dollars and cents involved, it was a really clear reminder of the value that the community places on this institution. And that has been inspiring to every one of us. And so we're deeply grateful to all of you and to the community. And I will tell you that that inspiration has contributed to growing confidence that we're not only going to reemerge from this pandemic, as Pam said, survive the pandemic, but thrive on the other side. And so, again, I just can't express how meaningful that support has been. And now I'd like to welcome our maestro, Giancarlo Guerrero, to the town hall. And Giancarlo, there you are. And I guess, let you say hello to everybody. You're muted still, but start.
Hi, Alan.
Yeah, start by saying hello, and then and just wanted to ask you to first talk a little bit about your experiences in recent months, and some of the things that you've experienced in this pandemic.
Well, good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year to everyone. I hope that everyone was had a wonderful time with your families during the holidays. These very odd holidays that we all had, but at least I hope that you were able to be healthy and spend time with family. My two daughters came home to Nashville from college, so it was great to have them at home. And now they're back in their quarantines and getting ready for the semester that begins in a few weeks. Well, this has been very, very interesting times. I have to say that I consider myself immensely lucky because, unlike many of my musician friends, I have been able to at least keep some activity, musical activity going because of my relationships with two particular orchestras in Europe, in Lisbon and in Wrocław, Poland. And so from that point of view, I think I have been very fortunate that, although limited, I've been able to at least keep my musical muscles working and bringing music and keeping myself occupied. And I have to say that in both of these orchestras, it's remarkable to see not only the musicians themselves, but the audience themselves realizing how lucky they are, because they are aware in this hyper-connected world that this is not something that is happening around the world, not in the United States, in some other places. I mean, it's been completely shut down. So they do realize how lucky they've been. And I think they've added a certain degree of special feeling in the hall when we do play performances. Obviously, this has added a lot of challenges, not only musical and logistic, having to make music distanced. This is not something that as musicians we're used to. We like being close to each other, breathing next to each other. So this whole social distancing thing, for the time being, we're willing to put up with it. But this is very difficult to make music under those circumstances when you're away from those people, especially when a big part of music making is the human connection that is so key. I also have to say that I've learned so much about regulations on every different country imaginable, because even traveling now can be quite of a nightmare. I actually ended up having to get special visas from different countries to be able to travel, but even those doesn't ensure that I will be allowed on the plane. I can tell you two experiences, particularly that I arrive at the airport, I show my passport with all of the necessary visas and permits for somebody at the counter saying, nope, you're not boarding the plane. And then walking down a couple of counters to another airline, and they're gonna let me board the plane. So it gives you a little bit of the chaos that was going on in the middle of all of this, where regulations are not passed around And it really becomes a matter of luck of who you talk to. So from that point of view, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking showing up at the airport and not knowing, you know, if you're going to be able to travel. If you do travel, how are you going to get there? But it's been interesting. I do have to say that one of the most difficult things for me personally has been, again, that ability to connect and to see my colleagues. I conducted in Poland and Portugal, but I wasn't able to even have lunch or coffee with any of my colleagues and my friends there. So the trips are not as fun as they used to be. I have to lock myself up in a hotel room. There's only so much Netflix and Hulu that I can watch before I start getting desperate. But as I said, I consider myself lucky that I've been able to at least make some music under these circumstances. And I cannot wait for the day that we get back to some sense of normalcy, especially in Nashville, our home. And I get to make music with our wonderful musicians again in the near future.
You might talk a little bit about, Giancarlo, a little bit about the kinds of things that you've been able to do even in Europe. I know, you know, the European model of funding orchestras is very different than in the United States. Most of the musicians in orchestras in Europe are state employees, government employees. And so payroll has not been the kind of issue it has been in the United States. But also, so those orchestras have been able to continue doing some things, and a few orchestras here have as well. Different orchestras have different circumstances, but talk a little bit about the kinds of programs you've been able to do and what the conditions have been like, because that probably portends a lot for what we're going to find that we have to do as we get restarted performing.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a very good point. The fact that the funding mechanism in Europe and pretty much the rest of the world is state funded. So the musicians and the staff are all pretty much, you know, government employees. And that has provided them with a sense of at least job security. But yeah, they have also been very, you know, deeply affected by this. So the programs now all over Europe where I conducted were 1 hour long, no intermission. Rehearsals even are done without intermission. We would do either 1 hour and a half or 2 hours where the musicians are only allowed to arrive 10 minutes before. You have to bring your cases on stage with you. There are very specific regulations depending on the country as well. But you show up, you rehearse, you keep a distance. We're all kind of, you know, 6 feet, 4 feet, depending on the city and the country that you're in. But there is some distancing. We're all wearing masks. When we get on stage, we take them off. In Europe, we've been fortunate to be able to at least make music without the mask, which is for a conductor is very difficult. 90% of what we do comes from the face, and having a mask on, it's almost like having to conduct with both hands tied behind my back. So a lot of testing, that has also been a big part of it. They test quite regularly. And that has made everybody feel a little bit safer. But I have to tell you, in both of these orchestras in Lisbon and in Poland, there is a great degree of fear and apprehension in everybody that comes in, because we know we're putting ourselves at risk. We understand that. And we try to do our best to keep our distance and to respect everybody's space. But in the end, sometimes, you know, things happen and you become, you know, things happen that may be unforeseen. But from that point of view, it was very inspiring to see how everybody just did their best to you know, follow the rules and more importantly, make sure that everybody felt safe. And that to me was one of the greatest things. I also have to say that from the audience point of view, I also noticed how everybody that came in was more than willing to do whatever was necessary in terms of how the logistics were to even go in and go out. I will give you an example. When I arrived in Lisbon, they had only 50% capacity. So they basically taped, they had one seat and then 2 seats empty and then 1 seat and then 2 seats empty. And it didn't matter if you came with 5 people together, you were supposed to be sitting separately. And there was a very strict protocol, even giving you like a stadium, a door number of where you were supposed to come in and a time when you were supposed to be there, because you were going to be going in on stages and making sure that there was no crowding on the doors. And then at the end of the concert, it was even more remarkable to see that, like the airplanes, they had literally ushers at the end of each row. And basically at the end of the concert, you were supposed to just sit there, and then an usher would tell you when to stand up, and then the whole row would exit. And it was kind of, you know, funny to see that, but remarkable also that all of these new rules, quote unquote, were learned very quickly, and people were more than willing, as I said, to learn them and get used to them in order to enjoy some live music. And another thing that I noticed, for example, was that no programs were giving out. So they would basically flash the music for that evening on screens on the side. And then when I walked on stage, those screens would go off and then you knew what the program was. And by the way, the programs were all for smaller orchestra. We never did anything more than 50 or 60 players on stage. So Beethoven symphonies, Mozart symphonies, and those programs, by the way, kept changing almost daily as the regulations were being changed. When I arrived in Poland, it was 50% audiences. Then the second week, it dropped down by regulation by 25% because of the virus's quantity was going up. And then by the third week, no audiences. So we were doing streaming. And going back to what you said, Alan, about how the funding mechanism work, another thing that in Europe, you have to remember that many of these orchestras already are part of the larger radio broadcasting networks. So many of these ensembles already had the logistics necessary to broadcast, not only on the radio, but also over the internet. So they already had the necessary equipment on stage, video cameras and microphones, to be able to broadcast, because during our normal time, that's a big part of what we do. We broadcast over the radio all over Europe. So that in many ways had them a little bit better prepared in the middle of this to be able to do these distance performance.
Well, you know, one thing that I know all of this does is it has, you know, constricted what you can do from a repertoire point of view. But that of course will change as conditions change. But you know, the other thing that, you know, you talk about the European model. We all know that the things that we have been through in the last few months, the hard decisions that we had to make, while on the one hand have led us to a place where we're now on a path back. On the other hand, they've been extraordinarily challenging for our musicians, and you yourself were furloughed. Mm-hmm. So talk about that a little bit and how that's affected the ensemble, because I know that's a burning question for a number of our patrons on the call. You know, I know you've talked to some of the players in recent weeks.
Listen, we're like a great baseball, football team. And we have to train together. And the fact that we have been separated for months now, it's devastating. Not only from a personal point of view of seeing our colleagues and our friends, but from an artistic point of view, we haven't been able to flex our muscles. And when we come back, I have no doubt that our players are going to do even more incredible things than they ever did before. There's no doubt in my mind, because of not only the talent and virtuosity that they all have, but more importantly, because of the love that they have for the institution and for our city. But definitely, we're going to have to like almost get back together and start not learning to play again together, but getting that feel back. Because after a while, you get into this habit almost of you know, you don't even think about it. You know how things work together and you make them happen. Plus, we have to remember that there has been a psychological impact to all of this. I mean, many of us, I mean, at times, including myself, have gone into bouts of distress and depression, because there never seems to be an end. And of course, the news don't help either. But on top of all of that, I personally have remained hopeful, and I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I see it now more than ever, especially knowing that that this has been confirmed, that we do have a community that cherishes our orchestra, and to see the generosity of our patrons and our donors to step up and do whatever is necessary to keep that light going, and making sure that when we are able to come back, that they will have our back and will support us, and that the musicians I know will be coming and doing their part and performing. But I do have to say that that's going to be a special moment when we all come on stage together, because one thing that I think all of us almost took for granted, we all thought that this, you know, there was never a danger. And in many ways, there may be a positive thing to all of this, to think that reminds us that life is indeed fragile, that everything we have and hold dear can very quickly disappear in an instant. And the fact that this happened so quickly, like whiplash, I mean, we were completely not warned. I mean, one day all of a sudden we were rehearsing, and then the next day we were shut down. And then all of us, I remember saying, oh, we'll be back in April. Oh, we'll be back in May. We'll be able to finish the season. And of course, as the news got worse and worse, I mean, reality just sunk in. But now I think in many ways, I feel we're on the other end of the spectrum, when we're now with the vaccines and many other things. We see that there is a path forward, and I am very hopeful for that. But definitely, this has been a great shock. But from a musician's point of view, I know that is the one thing that we are all looking forward to be on stage, performing live for our wonderful audiences and going back to what it is our main mission, which is to bring great music to Nashville.
Yeah, and I have to say that the music is the thing we have all missed greatly, and so we're anxious, to be able to take our seats in the concert hall and hear our fabulous orchestra. And that raises the question, as you've traveled and you've been able to do what you have been able to do with some of the orchestras in Europe and even here in the U.S. You've had a couple, I know, of guest conducting engagements, and those are orchestras that have had special funding to keep things as best they can alive in terms of performance. But in terms of what you miss the most, what do you miss the most about performing with the Nashville Symphony in this hall, in this community? What have you missed the most?
Oh, the people, by far. I mean, that's the reason why we make music. And when I say the people, I of course mean the wonderful players of the orchestra. I mean you and our fabulous staff that I see on a daily basis. The people that I run into downtown Nashville when I go out for a walk. That has been something that has been also a little bit painful, to go to Nashville and be it so quiet. I'm not used to that. Nashville is supposed to be filled with live music. I mean, this is completely unnatural to walk around this beautiful city and have, to be able to hear the birds. I mean, I'm not used to that. So, but more importantly, is our wonderful audience members and the people that I see during our pre-concert lectures, the regulars that I come to consider almost part of my family. So without them, the music makes no sense. See, it's like, without our audience, I mean, playing music is difficult, which I would like to add is also a huge part of playing music to empty halls. I mean, yes, I'm happy that I'm making music, but it doesn't feel right. Here I am playing music in an empty hall where, if you've ever seen some of the videos that I've conducted abroad, if you follow my Facebook page, it's very odd to walk on stage and take a bow to an entirely empty hall. That's just, it's funny. We those of us on stage are almost like laughing. It's like, how ridiculous is this? But then we get into the music. So it is all about everybody and the people that not only the musicians that I make music with, but the audiences and the staff that make it all come together. So by far, that has been the most difficult thing. Being locked up in a hotel room is not fun, and going out to lunch with you and with a lot of my players and having coffee with them and hearing about their families, not over Zoom, but in person, and watching them, sharing their joys and happiness. That's what it's all about. That's what inspires me every day.
Yeah, well, that's a great answer. And, I will say that, every one of us who, just the small number of us that stayed behind to try to help get things restarted and refocused, the thing that has inspired and motivated us, we've been inspired by the support of the community, but the thing that has really motivated us is the people. It's getting our colleagues back on stage. It's working to get the staff back that we need to support that work. So it really is, ultimately the thing that we are focused on 24/7. And with that, I know that we have some additional performances, and I think even a discussion with some of our musicians. So I'll turn it to you to introduce the next piece, and I'll sign off here for a few minutes and let you continue the dialogue.
Well, thank you, Alan. And okay, so yes, we do have, speaking of people, we have some of our special musicians who are joining us on this call. And I see Julia Harguindey, our great principal bassoon player, Titus Underwood, our fabulous principal oboe player. Happy New Year to both of you, and welcome. And it's so great to see you. I've seen, I think, a couple of you in person in the last few months, but it has been interesting time for all of us. Oh, I also see Dan Lochrie, great bass clarinet player. Hey, Dan, Happy New Year. Welcome. He's joining us as well. So let's start this conversation. And Dan, let's start with you. Can you tell us what you've been up to, how you've been keeping busy musically and otherwise during this whole time? You're muted, I think.
Okay.
There you are.
Better. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Giancarlo. Good to see everybody. Naturally, you get a little bit of extra time during this shutdown because the schedules are very different. I actually finished a composition for solo bass clarinet that I had been working on for years and never could take the time to finish. So I did that and also played a bass clarinet recital at Belmont in October. And I played it to an empty hall. I never planned to do that. And it is weird. You're absolutely right. We were 12 feet apart. Bob Marler and I played the concert together, and Catherine Kohler also joined us for a couple of pieces. So it was great to make music, even though it was in an empty hall. And of course, they streamed it and all of that. I've also, of course, continued to teach at Belmont, and I've taken on high school students for extra money. But you know, I used to teach a lot of high school students, and so it's been a few years. So I've been teaching in Brentwood and playing in the quintet. We played a concert last night, 12 feet apart. That was the rule at Belmont. So every one of the quintet players was 12 feet from the next person. And, you know, we played our concert, took our bows, like you said, to an empty hall. So it is strange, but, you know, you have to keep going. At least we're preparing things and, and still making music. So.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, I think we're all very grateful for the opportunity to make it, but to say that it is normal is far from reality.
Of course. And playing together is far more difficult when somebody's that far from you. So
yeah, absolutely. So Julia, for you, what has been the most difficult thing about, you know, during this pandemic, I guess?
The most difficult thing, I think, is when we're young and we decide to be a musician, our entire life is around playing our instrument, playing with others, going up the ladder. And when all of that is removed and we don't have the passion of our life going on, we don't have concerts, we feel the sacrifice we have done to be where we are. I feel very much the fact that I'm far away from my culture, my country, my family that I haven't seen in over a year. So being away for the first time during the holidays, I never spent Christmas and all of that here in the US, and even less here with COVID, sick with COVID alone. So that sometimes can be difficult to not have the reason of getting up in the morning and take my bassoon and go play with my colleagues. And you start realizing, wow, it has been a long journey, and without it, things make less sense. And yes, we communicate with family, but it's different to be alone. It feels very far away all of a sudden.
Yeah. So Titus, what about for you? I mean, anything in particular that you found extremely difficult in this time?
The difficult thing about it is just being in that wave of sound, you know, that initial, just everyone playing together, making music together. I mean, I've done a lot of virtual things. I've been very fortunate to be busy during this time, but there's nothing like playing next to a colleague. I've had some opportunities where I played next to colleagues and things like that, but it's still very, very distant. And it's not the same type of synergy that you have, or that pulse that you feel when everyone is kind of tight in the same place. So that's been the most difficult time, not being able to see family as much, those type of things, you know, being very, very distant. My fiance, she's a doctor, so I hear a lot of the very harsh stories very regularly. So just keeping safe and all those things, so that's been kind of a toll just in general, not just the music part, but also seeing how hard it is for those who are working on the front lines, the doctors that are out there, that we should be very thankful for, that are taking care of so many people who have been ill. So just seeing both sides that have been the most difficult part for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also would like to welcome Luke Bryson, our wonderful librarian who joined us on this call. Happy New Year, Luke. It's great to see you.
Happy New Year.
And,
thank you.
So for you, I have a question about, you know, have there been any like new opportunities or something, some new hobby that you picked up in the middle of all this? I know I have.
Oh, absolutely. Well, since I'm not spending every day in the library now, that obviously has left a big void in life, but this has given me an opportunity to do something that I otherwise would not have. I actually recently, well, I guess in August, I started an online master's degree in arts administration to kind of sharpen my kind of leadership and managerial financial skills throughout this time. And even though I greatly miss seeing you, seeing our colleagues here, seeing our wonderful staff members and guests on a daily basis, it has been really great to kind of sharpen and hone another skill set that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do otherwise.
Well, I have to say that I'm very proudly, I've actually found one of my daughter's Nintendo Switch, and I have become a master of Doom Eternal, and I've been killing zombies over the last several months, and I finally reached level 10. So with that being said, Dan, anything outside of music that is helping you carry you through all of this time?
I've watched, like everybody else, I've watched a lot of series I never would have watched on Netflix. Actually leased a car. So, you know, you go out and do things, but it's not the same. I haven't actually developed a new hobby. So maybe I should. I'll take your word on Doom.
Listen, it's a good way to release stress. How about you, Julia? Do you have a new hobby that you found?
Yes, I started dancing salsa, reconnecting with some of my culture, and I used our pop conductor as for practicing, Enrico. So we started practicing salsa, and I dance several times a week now with my teacher, and it has been a lot of fun, in fact.
How about you, Titus?
I guess I share your passion, Giancarlo, video games, you know. So I think, I mean, all the games I haven't been able to play, I've caught up on that. But that's been kind of my new hobby, to be honest, outside of just doing music things, is video games can take up some very good quality time. And, you know, getting to those higher levels can be quite difficult. So my brain is still going.
Listen, I made it to level 10 last night on Doom Eternal after you know, about 6 months of trying to do it.
There you go.
That guy sitting on the plane, like, you know, using the chainsaw and going crazy, and the guy next to me on the plane looking at me like, who is this guy? So, you know, I'm sure I get a little bit overexcited at times, but it's a great way to release stress. Luke, do you have a new hobby?
Well, when this pandemic first started happening, I definitely began to eat and drink my feelings, and that was not sustainable in the long term. So I've picked up kind of running, jogging, and biking a lot, something I didn't have the time or I guess the willpower to do beforehand. So that has been really lovely. Although I would recommend, if you're going to get into cycling, steer clear of any kind of large debris in the middle of the road unless you want to potentially fracture your arm. So
yeah. Well, last thing I want to ask each and every one of you. Julia, with you, I mean, you have any special hope and desire for the symphony as we get back, hopefully in a few months?
Probably reinvent a little bit ourselves, connect a lot more with the community, have more diversity on stage, our repertoire. Just make sure that now that we have been apart for so long, then when we do reconnect, we make one with our audience and we serve our community.
Mm-hmm. Dan?
It's true. You know, we can't make music like this on our own. All of us are helpless in a way. So being able to get back together and create a higher purpose, really, because, you know, I can practice or I can do this or that, but together is where the symphonic music kind of raises us to a different level. And certainly I hope that's true of the audience and of the city as well. So I think let it make us unified. Let the music bring us together, I would say.
Luke?
I certainly agree with that. I think my hope for us is that we'll certainly be more unified down the road, and that, you know, we don't take this for granted anymore. Sometimes, you know, a lot of us, we put our whole lives into this, and working in a symphony orchestra is something of a dream, but it is also a job. So sometimes we can get kind of dragged down by the day-to-day stresses, the day-to-day, the workload. But I feel like after this, we're not going to take this as much for granted. And I think it's going to be a truly magical moment when we finally get to be able to play for an audience again.
Mm-hmm. And Titus?
I'm really looking forward to the new things. You know, what we've learned, there's always been, even though this has been a very tough time, there's been a silver lining with the new skill sets that we've learned over time, the time we've had to ourselves to think about the art that we do, how important, incredibly important it is, and what new innovative things we can bring to the stage, and as well being very connected to our community. in a much more innovative and meaningful and sustainable way. And I just want to thank, you know, everyone who's here for being symphony sustainers and all the things of bringing us back to the stage. We really appreciate that. And we love your support for us as well. And we can't wait to play for you and play with each other as well. So I'm most of all looking forward to that.
Well, it's so great to see all of you. As I said before, I miss you terribly, but I know that sooner than later we'll be together on stage making music and bringing joy, which I know that our audiences are desperate for that. So I thank all of you for joining us. And I believe now I'm going to be introducing another one of our wonderful musicians, our principal flute player, Eric Raton, who's going to be playing a piece by Jacques Ibert, nicely entitled Piece for Flute.
Hello and good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kimberly McLemore, and I'm the Vice President of Education and Community Engagement. And in just a minute, I'm going to be joined by violist Christopher Farrell, who is also a faculty member in the Enchelerando program. And it's a pleasure to join you this evening. And I just wanted to mention our commitment to providing education programming and resources for our community, even when we're unable to provide regular in-person programming. And this year for us, that new virtual programming looks like virtual fiddle violins and virtual sectionals and master classes with students in the area. And it also means continuing our Accelerando program. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the union for collaborating on an Accelerando faculty agreement, and to Choral Arts Link for being a key partner this season. And this program wouldn't have been possible without all of you. I'm also excited to share with you a little update about Accelerando this evening, and that we have been invited to apply for a second round of funding by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. And this is the 6th year of the program currently, and the last year of the first round of funding. So we're very excited to be invited to apply again, and hope that we can share the news about that application with you in the coming months. And with that, I wanted to bring in Chris Farrell into the conversation. And Chris, you're a teacher in the Accelerando program, but also a musician in the orchestra and composer. But I'm wondering if you could talk to us first about how teaching in the program looks a little bit different for you this year than it might in past years.
Sure. Thank you, Kimberly. And I'm really glad to be here and talk with all the patrons. And I was going to say that one of the most important things that we're doing right now as musicians is continuing to teach in the program. And yes, it is a completely different scenario than we are accustomed to. As all of us know, we've had to adapt to a new normal for now. All of our lessons are done virtually at this point. I don't think there are any lessons occurring by in-person visits. In fact, I have a student currently that started this year who I've actually never been able to have an in-person lesson with. So I've only met him virtually at this point. So one of the things that we all had to learn in the process of doing our lessons was just how to use Zoom effectively with students. And for those of you who are not musicians, one of the great challenges for us as musicians right now is that there's a lag time between what you say and what goes through the wires and up into the air and comes back down in somebody else's computer. And that lag time creates a problem with playing simultaneously with other people. And that is why many of the videos that you see are done usually as a layering of different players that have been produced after the fact. So in teaching the students, we've had to come up with ways of simulating a real environment where we're together, but we are on the computer. That said, we're doing it, and that is the most important thing, that we are continuing this program because of the mission of the program is so important to the Nashville Symphony. It's important to our communities. And one of the best things about this program, about Accelerando, is the number one thing that we're trying to do is change the face of the orchestra. We're trying to make our orchestras look more like our communities. And the way we can do that as musicians is to impart our knowledge to a new set of students. And music is a one-on-one learning situation. Every one of us has been taught by one teacher as just one person in a room. And that is the most important thing. That's how we pass on what we've learned, and we pass it on to somebody new. And hopefully someday a person from an underrepresented community right now will be teaching in this program and passing that knowledge on.
That's amazing. And, you know, Alan and Pam mentioned this earlier, but in addition to our education programming that's continuing this year, we've also been continuing our community engagement efforts. And it's going to be incredibly important as we consider how we navigate through and beyond the pandemic. And as a side note to our viewers, we are planning to hold some community listening sessions this year as kind of our reemergence planning. And if you're interested in joining any of those sessions, feel free to drop a comment in the chat, and we are happy to get in touch with you. If you're already on our email lists, you'll hear something soon. But it's really important to us that we hear back from the community about how we can better serve you and be a part of your neighborhood. So you'll be hearing more about that soon. But one of those community engagement programs that I feel I should mention is the MLK celebration, Let Freedom Sing, which just ended on Sunday for us. This year it was virtual because we weren't able to be in person. And it actually was expanded a little bit to be a week of content. And I just wanted to say this evening a big thank you to all of the community members, musicians, staff members who really helped make that program a big success. And so thank you, thank you. It's wonderful to see that program continue. And it was our 28th year for that program. And it's wonderful that there wasn't a gap in between our 27th and 29th season. So thank you, thank you. And Chris, I'm coming back to you because as a part of that MLK celebration, you arranged a piece. You did an arrangement of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. And I was wondering if you could talk with us a little bit about, you know, I came to you and said, hey, I'd love to get the Accelerando students performing on this program. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you chose this spiritual and how you approached that arrangement, if you don't mind.
Sure. So Kimberly asked me that we needed the Accelerando students to be involved. And what we needed was something that we could record and present. And so the challenge to me as a composer in this case, or an arranger really, not a composer, I guess, in this instance, was to make a setting basically of a song. And actually this one has kind of some personal attachment, Swing Low. I know this is going to sound really crazy, but this is the first song that I remember my mom singing to me when I was a kid. And there's another important part of this was that I wanted it to be something that had a sense of comfort and a sense of healing. There's so much that is going on that's crazy right now and difficult, and I felt like that the best thing I could do is create something that has more of a calming feeling to it than to create something that's incredibly virtuosic or emotionally all over the place. So in approaching it for the students, though, I had to adapt this to fit their abilities and the instruments that we had available. So that's part of the arranging process. And also, just to compliment the students, they sounded terrific. And one of the things that you're going to see in the video when we play it is that this was done separately, each student in their own home, recording to a click track, which just helps us align all of the players so that when we put it together, it sounds like music. And these are things that those students never had to do before this year. So what's impressive is they did it in a very short period of time, just a couple of days. So it just shows that the students are learning these techniques as well. So in addition to playing, they're learning the new language of music, which is coming through electronic media.
That's amazing. Thank you for breaking that down so our audience understands what's happening in the background of this. And that'll even be nice for them to know, leading into any of these other performances that they hear from our musicians that are being put together in the coming weeks. And big shout out to my husband who helped me mix the audio for this this recording that you're going to hear. And with that, Chris Farrell's arrangement of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot.
That was really beautiful. Believe Pamela is going to join me and make a few closing comments, but before we do that, I would like to let you know before Pamela wraps this up that we will have 3 performances immediately following Pam's comments, and I'll introduce those just before they run in sequence.
Well, I just want to thank all of the musicians and the participants in tonight's event. And thank you to everyone who submitted time and given our time tonight to listen. I've been watching the chat statements, and I could feel the passion from many of our participants. So thank you for that. I also want to thank our generous and patient donors and our ticket buyers, because we have not been able to make these kinds of progress without you guys. And the musicians return this January is just a first step in our journey this year. So until then, the board and the staff will continue to work tirelessly toward the Nashville Symphony's reemergence. We pledge to keep you informed with updates on our progress, and we pledge to keep you engaged with virtual performances until we gather again in person. And if you'd like to support us this evening, you can do so by visiting the NashvilleSymphony.org website. And that's it. Thank you so much for everyone's participation this evening. Alan?
Okay, Pamela, thanks. I would like to also add my personal gratitude to all of you for your time tonight and for your support, which has really enabled us to be where we are on this journey today. As we close, we have a sequence of performances, starting first with 1 player, then a duet with 2 players, and then a trio. So our first performance will be from Matt Abramo, who will perform the Allemande from J.S. Bach's Cello Suite No. 2 in D minor. So Matt is up first. Then Chris Farrell and Anthony Parse perform Chris's own Intervention No. 1. And then that will be followed by the cello trio we heard from earlier of Kevin Bate, Shelfan Zhang, and Anthony Lamarquina, who will perform the closing Fugetto from Julius Klengel's Little Suite for 3 cellos. And again, thank you all for being with us tonight.